Ms. Bingham with Adams and Reese. So we do thank you for joining us, and thank you for being interested in the business of the South Carolina Department of Education. Is there any objection to approving the minutes as presented? Hearing none, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. Is there any objective to approving the agenda as presented? Hearing none, the agenda is approved by unanimous consent. Public comment, no one has signed up for public comment at this time. Committee items, we have 2 items that we will be reviewing for today for your approval. The first one is the adoption of the Read to Succeed implementation guidelines for endorsements and course approval guidance document. That was good. And Ms. Hip will present for us. She is from the Office of Educator Services, Division of College, Career, and Military Readiness. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm usually presenting to the Education Professions Committee. I'm here today on behalf of my colleague, Dr. Alicia Green, from the Office of Instructional Supports. One of the joys in working at the department is collaborating with colleagues across the agency, and so our office and Dr. Green's office, as well as other colleagues, have worked really since the revision of the Read to Succeed Act on these guidelines and other things related to the implementation of Act 114. So we're here today to present a set of guidelines authorized under Act 114. As many of you know, Act 114 of 2024 substantially amended the Read to Succeed Act of 2014 to focus primarily on reading for students in kindergarten through grade 5, and also to focus on instruction, interventions, resources, programs, and other reading services, so that those materials, the things that we are presenting to kids to help them with reading throughout their school years, is aligned with scientific principles of reading instruction, structured literacy, and foundational literacy skills. So these guidelines we're bringing to you today support the implementation of the amended Read to Succeed Act. For endorsements, and many of you are familiar with the endorsement requirements that have been in place for teachers in South Carolina schools. In addition to amending the focus of Read to Succeed, Act 114 also changed certification endorsement requirements for many of our educators. It eliminated the endorsement requirement for our in-service middle and high school teachers, while maintaining and really clarifying the requirements around early childhood, elementary, and special education, as well as principals who are working in elementary school settings. The guidelines, or the authorization in the amended Act, allows the board to approve guidelines on an annual basis around the professional development, the coursework, the certification, and the endorsement requirements for educators who are substantially supporting literacy instruction in our schools. So again, the guidelines that you have before you are intended for the implementation of the amended Read to Succeed Act. So kind of before we walk through the different sections and the guidelines, one of the kind of foundational pieces to this work was conducted by our Office of Instructional Supports, and my colleague Charlene Gleason is here. Charlene has worked substantially with Abby Duggins, Alicia Green, and others on the realignment of our South Carolina literacy competencies. So those were approved in 2024, again, taking those competencies and aligning them with the scientific principles of reading instruction. They did substantial work with stakeholder groups, the Florida Center for Reading Research. But these revised competencies kind of underline much of the work and support much of the work that you will see in the guidelines. So the educator requirements, just to kind of walk you through the sections you'll find in the guidelines. So there's a section here that deals with our in-service educators. Again, clarifying the Read to Succeed literacy teacher endorsement that is required for our folks in early childhood, elementary, and special education. The guidelines outline the timeline for earning that endorsement, updated options for earning the endorsement. Those include letters, also the reading assessments that you approved back in October that we will eventually use for certifying teachers in those 3 fields. So there are expanded options for earning this literacy teacher endorsement. The guidelines also spell out the professional development requirements for educators, especially K through 3, and much of that work has actually been expanded to include other teachers in our state as well. The Read to Succeed literacy endorsement for administrators is new and will be implemented as part of these guidelines. And again, we're really looking at focusing the professional development for our school leaders around what they need in terms of a literacy program. So previously, school administrators were required to earn the Read to Succeed requirement, that 1 course in content area reading and writing. But what our school principals in elementary settings really need is that preparation in supporting the implementation of a literacy program. And so this revised endorsement or new, it's kind of a newish endorsement, let's say it that way, really will focus on helping principals implement literacy programs in their schools. The Read to Succeed literacy requirement is now optional for our middle and high school teachers, but we did not remove it because we know we have teachers that have already earned it, teachers that are in the process of earning it, and many who may want to earn it as an option. So again, we've left that in place. And then there are several advanced Read to Succeed endorsements at literacy coach and literacy specialist. So Section 3 of the guidelines covers our in-service educators and requirements and options for them. Section 4 of the guidelines addresses our pre-service teacher candidates. So the revised Read to Succeed Act did actually not change any requirements at the pre-service level around early childhood, elementary, or special ed programs. Those ed prep programs have to provide a 12-hour course sequence in literacy instruction. Many of our institutions do that through 4 courses. Some actually spread that sequence over 5 or 6 courses, and we've allowed that as so long as they are aligned with literacy competencies. Also, our middle and secondary programs still have to offer a course in the foundations of reading and in content area reading and writing. So those requirements didn't change with the amendments to the Act. But what has changed for our ed prep programs is alignment to those competencies. Because again, the literacy competencies were revised in 2024. So our ed prep programs are now in the process of reviewing their courses and the approved course sequences for alignment with those revised competencies. Jackie Walsh and Jessica McLeese in our office have worked with our programs. May 1st of this year, our programs in early childhood, elementary, and special ed will have to provide assurances and realignment documents to us. By August 1st, our middle and secondary programs will have to do the same. So again, although course requirements haven't changed, what's in those course requirements may be changing to better meet the needs of students in our schools. We also incorporated into this section of the guidelines some ongoing requirements for our providers. These are things that we had in SCDE policy, but we believed it was important to elevate them to state board guidelines. Next sections. Section 5 is around in-service course content. So Charlene and her team have really substantially focused in this section and the following section on what has to be in courses that lead to the Read to Succeed endorsement. So they've done a very thoughtful job here in crafting descriptions of those courses, outlining the purpose of each of those courses. So a Foundations of Reading course, what should be in that course. If you're looking at one of the advanced endorsements, so that action research course for literacy coaching, what should be covered there. And then they've aligned those courses with the relevant standards from the literacy competencies. Section 6 of the guidelines get at the course approval process. So just like our pre-service courses, the courses for in-service educators also have to be realigned. And going back to 2014 and 2015, when we first began implementing Read to Succeed, there are lots of courses and professional development opportunities that have been approved over time for these endorsements. But the literacy competencies have changed. And so these courses have to be realigned. So essentially, all the current courses that are approved are going to expire or sunset in fall 2025. Entities who want to continue providing courses that meet the endorsement requirements are going to have to go through an approval process beginning this spring. And you'll see in the guidelines they have mapped out a timeline for the submission of those proposals. The literacy specialists here in the agency will review those, and the criteria for approving those courses is included in the guidelines as well. By August 1st of this year, they will publish the updated list of approved courses, and then moving forward, the focus will be not just on continuing to approve courses as they are submitted to the department, but how do we evaluate the quality of the courses that are being offered? Because the amended act does have some requirements around course evaluation. So our Office of Instructional Supports will likely come back to you next year, because remember, these guidelines can be presented to you on an annual basis, and they will look again at the evaluation components of this process as well. So that, in a nutshell, kind of goes over what's in these implementation guidelines. It is not a small document, but I can answer questions. Charlene is probably the far better expert on the course approval process, but we're more than happy to answer questions for you.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
When we get to third grade, are we monitoring and reporting the number of students or the percentage of children that are reading in third grade level as a measure of the effectiveness of the reading program in the various schools?
Matthew, do you want to kind of tackle that question?
So, Mr. Harrington, on the school report cards, there is a measure of what percentage of students or it does not meet approaches, meets or exceeds the ELA standards. And this year will be the very first time that Read to Succeed 2.0 goes into effect. And any child who is reading at does not meet level will be mandatorily retained in third grade unless they successfully complete summer reading camp or qualify for some other exemption. So that is reported by school on the school report card. And it's also a required reporting data point on the school reading plans that the schools have to reflect on to say, given our numbers, is this working in our school? Are we meeting the needs of the children and their ability to read?
Okay. Another level on the reading that I hear reported often is sixth grade level, saying that we have so many graduates from high school that aren't reading at a sixth grade level. Is there another assessment that we do in any kind of retention or remediation that's done for kids that aren't reading at a sixth grade level when they get there?
So on our third grade, in grades 3 through 8, we assess students annually on reading, and those results are reported on the school report card every year. And what Read to Succeed says is that children who are in that does not meet category should receive additional supports. Now, what those supports look like vary from school to school, and the only time we do mandatory retention is at third grade. And some data that I'll go over later today in my presentation to the full board is an indicator that we really need to start focusing on middle school a bit more, and that's something we're going to start working on.
So right now, it's still possible to graduate a kid that's not reading at sixth grade level.
I think it's unlikely, but I won't tell you it doesn't happen.
Dr. Ferguson, before you leave, so the retention at third grade, although I support that, do we have any idea of the magnitude of the problem and just how big of a bolus is that going to make in the system? And as a state, are we prepared for that?
So Read to Succeed 2.0 is going to be a great shock to the system this
Yeah.
school year. If the requirements that are current law were applied last year, 16,328 students would have been eligible for mandatory retention, which is a huge number. And that is why we have asked for more money to fund summer reading camps, because we know that there are going to be a lot more children who are going to need that intervention. We've also talked about how we can't wait to the end of third grade to start intervening. Retention is not the key, it's the stopgap. And we also have to recognize that 16,328 is a large number, but what that number represents is the number of children who are entering fourth grade reading at a first grade level. And so we've got to recognize that there's a problem. It's going to be a lot of very difficult conversations. Last week, I talked to 3 parents myself who were upset about the communications they were getting from their districts about the possibility of their children being retained. And I'm kind, I try to be sympathetic, but stressing the point that if you are being talked to right now, your child is reading significantly below grade level, it's not the end of the year. There's still time to intervene, but there's a lot of work that we have to do over these next few months.
Yeah, and communicating, of course, that it's not a punishment, but it's actually for their benefit.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
What percentage is that of the total third grade?
I think it's around 23%.
I have I want to tie on to something that Chris asked about. I just want to make sure that I understand this right. So if a child is not performing at the level they're supposed to, they're going to be held back in the third grade. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So they're going to be held back. Then we got second graders coming up, being bumped up into the third grade. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Where are we going to get these other teachers?
Well, what we're going to have to look at is, in some schools, they may not have a fourth grade because the students who should have been in fourth grade and the teachers who should have been teaching fourth grade may have to teach that remediation class in third grade. So the overall number of students doesn't change. The grade level composition will. And districts are going to have to think very intently about their human capital allocation because their third and fourth grade is going to look different next year. But if there were 1,000 kids in the school, there'll still be 1,000 kids in the school. It just may mean that there's more in third grade than there are in fourth grade.
You have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Dr. Ferguson, how much emphasis are we putting on that early childhood to get in? Because we have somewhat of a disconnect in our state with a wonderful First Steps program with 4K, and then we have 4K in our State Department. But in that disconnect, what type of emphasis are we putting on that early childhood education to get a good start?
Ms. Allison, so annually there is a research report done on CERDEP, and what I can say about that is that the CERDEP classrooms that are in public schools outperform all the other programs. So the students who are impoverished who go to CERDEP are much more likely to be kindergarten ready than students who are similarly situated who do not participate. First Steps is right below that. And so 4K works for those students, or it gets them closer. But what we often see is that first, second grade, kindergarten, we don't see that same amount of growth in some places to be sustained across the system. And so we have been working on these literacy competencies. We're working on providing the professional development of letters to every K-3 teacher in the state, and then also the implementation of new ELA standards and curriculum to support the learning in those early grades too. And one of the things that's really hard about those conversations with parents is that we often see parents who say, my baby got an A in kindergarten, an A in first grade, an A in second grade, and now you're telling me they're not reading on grade level. And so we've really got to start looking at grading practices too to be an accurate reflection of what the student can actually do, not whether or not they stand in line and are raising their hand before they ask questions, which often happens in K1 and 2. We've got to make grades an accurate reflection of what the student can actually do so that parents aren't surprised.
I think that just my opinion, I think until we figure out how to provide adequate intervention for a certain population that we have that needs intervention at birth up to the time the child is 5 years of age. I know 4K is going to help those kids a whole lot, but the problem is already ingrained by the time they get to be 3 and 4 years old. It's ingrained. And it can be broken. The only way it's going to be broken is when that child is an infant and with the parents working with that child and us going in and intervening and helping them. Florence School District 1 had a program like that they abandoned during COVID. It was proven to be tremendously effective. And I think we ought to look at that as somewhat of a model. And we ought to be bold enough to recommend to the district that they consider doing something like that and aligning with the state agencies that touch these mothers when they become pregnant and working together to see that we get that child ready for school.
Yes, sir. I have the good fortune of sitting on the state First Steps board for the department. And First Steps does a lot of good work around family community partnerships, the nurse visitation programs within districts. And there is a lot of work happening in that space by First Steps.
One of the things I'm aware of that First Step, because I was chair of Cherokee County's First Steps, is trying to, some of the child care facilities that we have with those very young children are not adequately maybe funded as well as trained. And that's, you know, that's where those children are during the day. And until we, you know, when First Steps started, there was a mandate through DSS and all the certification and the training, but that's kind of gone by the wayside now. I mean, it's
Ms. Johnson, I think that's coming back with some of the licensing requirement.
It was since before COVID, even before COVID, it was mostly online.
And one thing with that, too, I will share is in our letters, so we are doing letters training for 4K teachers, and that's happening for 900 4K teachers across the state in public schools. But we're also offering First Steps the opportunity to send their teachers to that same training so that they can benefit from that training that's going on in the district so that we can build capacity in those early childhood educators.
I just see that as a major stumbling block that we have. I agree with Mr. Harrington that we need to start early, but we've got to have people trained to work with those babies at that age. And if they're not, it is definitely just child care. Not to say that it's not good child care, but it's not preparing them for school. It is not preparing.
You add the capacity of First Steps and Head Start, you still don't touch the need that's out there.
No, sir. There's a lot of children who do not qualify for either program. I will say, though, that we are focused primarily at the agency on the K-12 because that is our mandate and our responsibility. And so there's a lot of room for improvement in K-12 education. And so that is really what we are primarily focused on while recognizing that birth to 5 is important and trying to come alongside First Steps to help them where it's appropriate.
Well, that's where the legislature comes in.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions? I have a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts about this, especially since I live it every day. The timing I'm concerned with, because we don't have those ESSER funds that we've had, and we're putting in even more and saying more children need to be retained. And we have less money to do things like after school and interventionists and part-time literacy coaches and all the things that I had last year, but I don't have this year. So I have grave concerns. I have concerns about what the data says about retention, what happens to a child when they're retention, and what happens by the time they get to high school with dropouts. But maybe that has changed too. But I do know that we've got to figure it out. And just saying, add in interventions and the day is full and teachers really are trying to do everything that is tasked before them. Somehow, if there is a way we could offer more support, and this may not be the place for me to say all this, but it is very real. It is tough. It could go from a district with last year having 43 children in a summer program to 250 this upcoming year. And then district schedules are different now. They're shorter, so finding teachers who want to give up their summer to do the work that needs to be done in the summer, and we've had a tough time. So I'll just add that in there and just try to figure it out, I guess. But it's quite disheartening. But I'll move on. Are there any more questions? Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the adoption of the Read to Succeed implementation guidelines for endorsements and course approval guidance document?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the adoption of the Read to Succeed implementation guidelines for endorsement and course approval guidance document.
Madam Chairman, I second that.
Thank you. It has been moved and it has been second. All in favor of the motion by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed by the like sign. Thank you. The motion carries. We're ready for thank you. We're ready for our second item.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee. I am Nicole Barker with the Office of Instructional Materials, and we are here today to ask your approval for the CURE materials. In January, when we came and presented the math programs for adoption that you approved in January, we mentioned the CURE period that we implemented, which gave our publishers a second opportunity to cure their materials. We provided them, after the review process, with their results from our rigorous process of the rubric. They received their results, so they knew what was missing, and they had the opportunity. It was not required. They did have to submit a deposit to participate in this cure period. They had about 30 days to do that. Then they submitted them back to our office. We used the same reviewers from the initial process that had reviewed their materials in the fall. Excuse me, I'm a little nervous. This is my first time. So the second reviewers we brought in, they had 1 week to review those materials based on their area of expertise. Again, they were also the same the same reviewers from the fall. So today we are asking your approval of those cured materials. We do believe that the process worked. Not all materials that were resubmitted passed, because we also stressed that with the reviewers, that this is not an automatic second chance yes. We wanted the process to mimic what we did in the fall, and we truly believe that it did. So you have the list of the 5 programs that we are asking your approval from that cure period, along with the public comments as well. Are there any questions?
Yes. So I was looking here at the Accelerate Learning 9 through 12, and the assessments appear to, none of them meet standards at this point. So are we recommending approval for that? So according to the sheet that we've got in here, it says that it says student understanding, and it says assessments does not meet, and then in the next one here, does not meet, then in the next one does not meet. Are we recommending approval for that?
I am wondering if that was the first discovery. Well, that sheet that you're having, Madam, is the public comments from the public period, yes.
Yeah, this is attachment 5.
We'll need to verify that you're looking at the correct summary. We may have put the wrong summary in there, Dr. Hanley.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to approve it if it doesn't meet standards.
Absolutely, I wouldn't be in front of you if it did not.
Well, I just don't have a computer, but we can go, if you'll hold off on that one. We'll
Sure.
check on that on a computer and come back to you.
Okay,
on that
thank you.
one. Is that fair?
That's fair.
All right.
Lee, all the, like, for the review, the one subline that doesn't, is rigor or assessment doesn't meet the others are exemplary. So I don't know if one could be.
It may be.
Here's the attachment
Okay.
for reference.
Can you log in right there and see that? See if they're looking at, that's the attachment, is that the right?
So, yes, and if you go down to the bottom at the total score is where to receive a perfect score for a program would be a score of 64. So, because this program overall scored a 58 is why it is being recommended, even though that one area may not be up to par, all of the other areas do require or do meet our requirements.
So how are we going to fix the assessment piece?
Materials we approved previously could have the same does not meet. Some of those could have an area does not meet.
Yes.
Correct, and while that is, I see the frown on your face and this discouragement, none of our materials had a perfect score. So the beauty of having these documents is to provide the implementation teams, and Dr. Ferguson may want to talk about that for just a minute, the needed areas which we will need to supplement with additional resources.
Okay, so we have the ability to supplement those because
Absolutely.
the assessments, that's a pretty abysmal score.
Well, and what I'd also add is that the publishers receive this feedback as well, and so they could use this to make their digital products better when we implement next year.
Okay.
But nobody received a perfect score.
No, I wouldn't expect a perfect score,
Right.
but I would expect maybe a little better than a 4.
And the other piece is that districts will use this to select the resources in their districts, and these materials will be provided. So if I were in a district looking at this, I may not choose this one with that low score, but it did meet our review criteria.
Thank you.
So with the assessment, that means we've taught it all, but the assessment doesn't line up to what we've taught to be able to know where students are. So we would, as a state going, we would supplement at the district level? We would need to do that? Or would we do that for any category, for any one of these books? If something is not up to par, we would.
One of the components of the vision for the Office of Instructional Materials, the new vision, and being in, the new office being in the division with Dr. Ferguson's other offices is to work collaboratively and to, rather than just put materials out there, quote, without the conversation with the Office of Assessment and Standards, teacher effectiveness, our transformation coaches, literacy coaches, and math coaches now will have these materials and these notes and be able to strategize and when offering support to teachers. In addition, we will be in the Office of Instructional Materials looking at all of our supplemental software purchases and looking to augment, if you will, those areas that have deficits. So we may have some available at the state level. Again, it gives districts more support and more help in being sure when they do purchase something at the local level. If you got this, you decided on these materials, you really like the way that it's being presented in all the direct teaching and activities and so forth, but you may need to add some assessment pieces at the district level. So it's a multifaceted approach to high-quality teaching and learning using high-quality teaching materials.
Madam Chair.
If we've got the competency to be able to evaluate the material, do we not have the competency to upgrade the materials ourselves and make sure what we give to school districts? Are we not allowed to do that?
We're asking publishers to digitally support those weaknesses and
see.
identify those, but the rubric itself, these materials passed or met the standards comprehensively.
But I mean, can we tell them, can your office tell a publisher, this is what you need to do? Do we do that?
Probably not.
That was the purpose of the cure period. So in years past, it was basic, I don't want to say it like that. It was a much more forgiving process in years past, where that if a publisher applied to be on the list, unless there was a very good reason for it not to, they got on the list. And that is why there was maybe 20 options. This time, we cut a lot of the fat and the ones that did not meet South Carolina standards and set that rubric. And then if they didn't meet it in the first process, we gave them feedback and said, go back and fix your product and try again. And these resources were the ones that fix their product enough that it met the criteria that we set.
So it's
There
a
are still
continu-
problems.
Continuous improvement process.
Yes, sir.
I see.
And these are all available to districts as well to be able to decide whether or not they want to choose this particular product or another one, as long as it's on the list.
And Matthew, I think that while we're approving the instructional materials, a textbook, that is not the only that's not the only thing that we teach from. That's not the only piece of the curriculum that we have. If I'm in a district and I'm using one that maybe did not get a high rating on assessment, that gives me a great opportunity. Instead of using the published assessment, I can work with my teachers to create one that maybe would even be obviously much better and give me immediate feedback on what those needs are. So, I mean, it's a huge opportunity for districts to come around for professional learning to really enhance the materials that we've adopted good ones, but with what we supplement, we can even make them better.
Yes, sir. And to add to that, too, we also have the approved formative assessments like MAP, iReady, and STAR, and those also are aligned to South Carolina state standards, and that's the primary district level assessment. This would be the more classroom assessments. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, as I listen, I too am very concerned with all of the things that seem to be exemplified and in place, that the only area as it relates to student understanding, and as I understand it, in the state of South Carolina, our schools and our students are judged by success in more than not using assessments. Am I right? That's how we know whether or not our children are doing what they need to do by using assessments. So I too have cause for pause regarding student understanding and the assessment piece, and it does not meet. I'm just struggling with that. I heard all the good things that you all were saying, but if these are materials that we're supposed to be investing in, then something needs to be different,
And
in
I
my
think,
opinion.
too, to look at the rubric, what this looks at is whether or not the indicators for this. So it offers strategies and guidance for assessing students' prior knowledge within and across grade levels. That particular resource did not meet that indicator. It also did not meet the indicator for accommodations that allow all students to demonstrate their knowledge and skills without changing the content of the assessment. It did meet that there are multiple types of assessment, including formative, interim, benchmark, and summative. It also met the criteria that there is explicit guidance for teachers to use evidence of students' thinking to assess their progress towards math understanding. So it's not perfect, again. We also do not assess at the state level in Algebra 2, and so it is probably more of a subjective criteria that these teachers applied, these review materials applied, because they don't have a state assessment to benchmark Algebra 2 against, because we assess in Algebra 1.
So Matthew, Accelerate Learning is Math Nation.
It is, yes, sir.
Do they still have the student coaches
They
involved in that program? That is a phenomenal resource for students, especially at high school when they're struggling with math. The student coaches that they can access most any time to help re-explain areas that they're having difficulty in is incredible. And I've seen it in action. I've seen it in schools that use it. I've seen kids that hesitate because they don't understand math to ask a question in class because they don't want to be embarrassed, but they'll go home and get online with their coach and get their questions answered. Right. And I talked to one ninth grader who was taking Algebra 1. He says, I'm not good at math. He said, but I'm going to get with my coach before I come to class. I'm not going to be embarrassed. So I think that is an incredible resource for our students to have. And I just know from experience with Math Nation, for teachers not to have, high school teachers not to have that resource would be crippling.
I think this is beautiful that we have choices. So there are 5 different choices that a district can choose from. That's very good. It'd be different if we were saying in this group, we're going to adopt it and push it out and everybody would use this. I think having a criteria is always a great thing to do because you can see where the weaknesses are and where the strengths are. So I like the idea that we can look at it at a school level even, and we are doing that, and pass that on to the district, and the district decides kind of how it goes. I think that is a biggie, but I think that when you know it, you have to fix it because there is no perfect textbook. So to know it, I think that is a good thing, and to give companies the opportunity to go back and fix it benefits children in the state of South Carolina. So I think those things are very good. I love that we talk things through and let voices be known. So are there any more questions? For high school, I saw that. Well, they must be, evidently they're better than the other options. So, because they really plowed through them and sent them around the state and went back. I remember there were no options. They were like, here's the book and make it happen, kind of. So,
one other thing I did want to say about
yes,
being able to take these materials around to different places in the state.
yes.
I did get, not a lot, but I got a couple of messages from people that I don't even represent, but I got it from people from around the state saying that they just didn't feel like the time was long enough. They would have liked to have reviewed the materials longer than the time that they had. So if there's any way in the future with, as we're shopping things around to the various areas of the state, if there's any way possible to keep them there a little bit longer, I think, there are some interested folks. So let's face it, a lot of folks are not going to review these things, but there are definitely some interested folks out there that would like to have a little bit longer to review them.
Yes, sir.
So.
I think the statute, the regulations, not in statute, the regulation says a minimum of 30 days. Most of these were available on the internet for 60 plus this year. The ones you are considering today were under that 30-day mark because of the cure period.
Okay.
But point taken.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
to point to your question about offerings, remember that you already approved 3, and that, so there are 3 or 4 options for this, for textbooks in that course.
That's true.
After
Thank you.
if you would choose to approve these.
Thank
These are
you.
just in addition to that original list. And that was really one of the pieces of feedback that we got from that first group, was the fact that there weren't enough options. But we do have, we'll be on the road in the last 2 weeks of February, 9 days in 9 locations for people to look at these materials, districts to look at them.
Okay, good.
And take them home, samples and so forth.
Thank you. Yeah, as long as districts are getting full disclosure that, you know, if they're getting this information, plus an encouragement for the, for both, you know, districts, the state, as well as the publisher to improve the assessments, I think I would probably be okay with it, as long as we're continuing to push the publisher to, hey, come on, you know, help these folks out. So, but I'm glad that there's this this rubric here to, you know, really point out to the publisher that, you know, listen, you've got an area that you're doing well, and you've got an area that you're deficient. Right. So.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the report of recommendations from the 2024 Instructional Materials Review Panels from the CURE period?
Madam Chairman, this is Richardson, and I make the motion
Thank you.
that we accept this.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Hanley, second.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the like sign. The motion carries. We have no items for information.
Madam Chairman, excuse me, before the young lady sits down, I would like to just say that
Good job.
this was her first time speaking to the
And look
group,
what
and she
happened.
was nervous, and I want you to know, if I had to get up and speak with Dr. Ferguson sitting behind me, I'd be nervous too. But I thought she did an excellent job for her first time.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Consent agenda, is there a motion to place both items on the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I move that we place both items, SLA 01 and SLA 02, on the consent agenda for today.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, sir. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed by the like sign, the motion carries. We have no other business. Adjournment, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Frierson seconds.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion to adjourn signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the like sign, the motion carries and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.